Welcome to Writing Today. Last week and the week before, we talked about the problems and the solutions in the stories that we read. And we talked about how that big problem and the way it gets solved is really the heart of our story. Whenever we're reading a book or a short story, or if we're doing some writing of our own, figuring out what the heart of that story is helps us understand the story. And we can use that same strategy as writers to really make sure we understand the story that we're trying to tell. So today, I'm going to challenge you to think, what is my story really about? And think that about your own story. We're going to talk about how we can be planning to show the heart of the story. So let me start by showing you the story that I'm working on right now. This time I was trying to think of a real life problem, and the problem I thought of was how much I wanted to be treated like my older cousins. They were all a little bit older than me. One of them was only like 6 months older, but there was one that was 2 years older and one that was 3 years older than me. And I got left out a lot, even though I felt like I should be included because I felt like I was almost as big as them. And they left me out a lot. And so I thought about that and I made up my own story based on that experience. So I'm thinking about my own life problem where I got left out of the stuff they wanted to do and how I had to work hard to get accepted. So I made up this story about a girl named Cassidy, and you can see my character box is up here where I was writing about my made up character. I called her Cassidy. And in my story, she's going to be 12 years old. And I want her to be like trying to prove that she's as tough as her cousins, but she's really scared, but she's learning to stand up for herself because she's worried that maybe they're going to laugh at her or leave her out of even more stuff if she tries to stand up for herself. So it's kind of a scary place for her to be. So I decided that the story's going to be Cassidy and her cousins, and they're going to be at the cousin's house because that's where we went to do lots of fun stuff when I was a kid. My cousins had all like the best stuff, and so that's um, what I'm going to write for my made up story. So then I thought about what my problem is going to be and how my problem will start and how it will get worse. Remember, we talked about the oh no, phew strategy. So I have Cassidy's cousins won't let her play video games. That's the problem starting. They're all playing video games. And then the problem gets worse when the cousins go outside to ride the go-kart, and then when it's Cassidy's turn, they just skip her. So now the problem's worse. At first, they wouldn't let her play video games. Now they won't let her ride the go-kart either. And then I thought, how's my problem going to get worse? Oh, I know. Because my dad always stood up for me. So my dad would have been like, hey, you be fair. So I'm imagining Cassidy's dad is going to do that. Say, hey, that's not fair. You let her have a turn. But the problem is Cassidy doesn't know how to drive the go-kart. She kind of has to pretend that she knows and figure it out. And then this really happened to me. When Cassidy does ride the go-kart, she gets it stuck in a tree and she has to decide, like, do I go back and tell the cousins that I got it stuck, and then they could be like, oh, see, we knew you weren't old enough, or does she figure it out? And so then my big climax moment is when she sucks it up and she's like, I can do this, and she gets the go-kart out of the tree on her own. And then after that, I want the cousins to like recognize that she can hang, and so then they'll be nice to her, and then they ride go-karts some more, and this time they just let her ride and they don't make a deal out of it. And then at the end of the story, my resolution will be that they play video games that evening, and instead of leaving her out, they're like, hey, it's your turn, and she doesn't have to keep fighting for a turn. So this is the story I wanted to write. So um, hopefully by now you should have a story and you've got those oh no, phew moments already built into your story. And now here is where we really get into the interesting part of the story. We've talked about all the events, but I want to talk about what the heart of this story is. If I was really going to think about it, what's the big idea? So I'm going to draw a heart up here, and I'm going to ask myself, what's the heart of this story? What's the real conflict or the problem? What is this story really about? And it's my story, so I get to decide. And when I think about it, I really think this story is about a kid who is standing up for herself and saying, I want to be treated fairly. So this is really a story about Cassidy standing up for herself. So I'm going to write that in the heart. Cassidy standing up for herself. That's really what this story is about. Cassidy is standing up for herself. And in fact, maybe I can even go deeper than that. Instead of just saying Cassidy is standing up for herself, I'm going to make a new heart and really think about this. This story is really about the cousins not treating her fairly, and Cassidy is standing up for herself. So I'm going to write that cousins not being fair, and Cassidy is standing up for herself. All right, that's really what I want this story to be about. So once I've got that figured out, I've got the heart of my story. I really need to show that. I'm going to go back through my problems and I'm going to ask myself, am I doing a good job of showing those cousins being unfair? How could I make it more clear that they're being unfair? How could I add details and dialogue and action and character thinking to show that? I really want my reader to go, oh, I see those cousins being unfair. And I see Cassidy trying to stand up for herself. So I'm going to come down here back to my first problem. Cassidy's cousins won't let her play video games. How could I show them being more unfair? Ooh, I could show that because they think she's too little. They think they're so much older than her, but they're only like a year older. Because they say she's too little. And so I could have them say that. That sounds like, ooh, there's that say word. I've got some dialogue in there. Cassidy, you can't play this game. It's not appropriate for you. It's too hard for you. What kind of stuff might they say to avoid giving her a turn and treating her fairly? And then the other half of the heart of my story is that I want her to be standing up for herself. So what could she say to stand up for herself? I'm going to think about her character. She's trying to prove that she's tough, but she feels scared, but she's learning to stand up for herself. What might she say? Maybe she could think about how unfair it is. She thinks it's really unfair. I could show her character thinking. Whoa, that spot in my story just got a lot longer now because when I get ready to draft it, I can show all of this stuff. All right, I might just even draw a little heart over that. I've got the heart of the story in that problem. All right, let me look at the next step. Cassidy's cousins go outside to ride the go-kart. When it's Cassidy's turn, they skip her. How could I show them being really unfair and show Cassidy standing up for herself? How could I show them being unfair? Ooh, I might have their actions. I might have them like, she steps forward for her turn, and then they just kind of shove her out of the way and say, go sit down, you're too little. Ooh, they skip her. They shove her. And, ooh, I bet they could tell her to go sit down. What could Cassidy do? She's starting to stand up for herself more. Maybe she could tells them it's her turn. Ooh, so now instead of just her cousins going outside to ride the go-kart and skipping her, I'm going to have them shove her and tell her to go sit down. They might even say, you're too little. What are you even out here for? Go sit down. And she can tell them it's her turn. As you can see, I'm going through each step of my problem and I'm saying, how can I show the heart of my story? Now I can continue this with all these different parts. Every part of my story, every oh no moment, the few moments, and even as things start getting better, I should be able to go back and say, am I showing that she thinks those cousins are being unfair and she's trying to stand up for herself? So that's what I'm going to challenge you to do today. The next slide is going to ask, how are you showing the heart of your story in your story map so that when you are ready to draft on Wednesday, you're ready to write with the heart of your story in mind.